In the shadowed heart of the Amazon, Clayton lay motionless, rain mingling softly with his fading consciousness. Around him, eyes like molten gold pierced the twilight. Jaguars, the silent rulers of the jungle. But instead of claws, Clayton felt the warmth of protection, the gentle vigilance of a forgotten friend. Could an act of kindness from the past become the difference between life and death today? Sometimes, salvation arrives on silent pause. After the relentless storm, Manaus awoke drenched and humid, bathed in hues of emerald and gold as dawn seeped through dissipating clouds. The Amazon city was alive again, its streets bustling with vendors pushing carts laden with vivid fruits and fishermen unloading their overnight catches along the riverbanks. The air was thick with moisture, carrying scents of fresh earth, ripe mangoes, and the distant fragrance of blooming orchids. Clayton Montgomery stood near the edge of the bustling marketplace, quietly observing the awakening city. A seasoned explorer in his late 40s, Clayton possessed the rugged physique honed by years in the U.S. Marines and later countless expeditions into perilous wildernesses. His broad shoulders, sculpted through years of disciplined training, stretched the fabric of his olive green utility shirt. His dark hair, speckled with silver strands at the temples, framed his strong jawline, tanned and weathered by sun and wind. Deep-set gray eyes carried the unspoken weight of past traumas, softened only occasionally by quiet compassion when speaking of his missions to protect wildlife. After retiring from active duty, Clayton had dedicated his life to conservation efforts, tracking poachers, removing deadly traps, and rescuing animals endangered by the cruel commerce that thrived beneath the forest canopy. Today, his mission was urgent. Reports had come in overnight of increased poacher activity deep within the rainforest, and Clayton felt the familiar surge of responsibility. He checked his equipment methodically. A razor-sharp Bowie knife, a trusted companion that had saved his life countless times, rested securely at his hip. His survival kit, compact yet comprehensive, contained bandages, water purification tablets, compass, and a compact but powerful radio transmitter. Every piece had been carefully selected, reminders of his military precision, a habit he never abandoned. Clayton's contact, Dr. Eleanor Pierce, was late, but he felt no irritation. Eleanor was young, in her early 30s, with strawberry blonde hair she often tied carelessly into a ponytail. Petite and wiry, she carried herself with a fierce determination and tireless energy that defied her slight build. Her emerald eyes, sharp and observant, reflected deep empathy for animals, but also revealed a streak of stubbornness born from countless confrontations with locals reluctant to abandon illegal hunting. Despite her youth, Eleanor's authority as a veterinarian and conservationist was unquestioned. Minutes later, Eleanor appeared, pushing swiftly through the market crowd toward Clayton. She wore khaki cargo pants and a light, breathable white shirt now damp from the humidity, her face flushed with urgency. "Sorry I'm late, Clay," she apologized breathlessly. "Another wounded animal at the clinic." Clayton nodded understandingly. "No worries. The storm has probably set our friends back as well." As they left Manaus, the hum of city life gradually gave way to the dense, reverent quiet of the rainforest. Rain had soaked the jungle through the night, leaving the ground slick and treacherous. Clayton led the way, carefully stepping over twisted roots and ducking beneath low-hanging vines heavy with water droplets that shimmered like tiny crystals in the occasional shafts of sunlight piercing through the dense canopy. Eleanor followed close behind, moving agilely despite the slippery terrain, her sharp eyes constantly scanning for hidden dangers or signs of injured wildlife. The jungle felt alive around them, vibrant yet eerily hushed, broken only occasionally by distant bird calls or rustling leaves from unseen creatures. "These poachers have grown bolder," Clayton remarked quietly, scanning the ground for any fresh footprints. "We need to find their snares before any animals get caught." Eleanor agreed silently, her expression a mixture of anger and sadness. Clayton admired her unwavering dedication. Though decades younger than himself, her passion and courage matched his own. They rarely spoke about personal lives, yet mutual respect had forged an unspoken camaraderie. Hours into their journey, fatigue began creeping into Clayton's muscles, and his breath came harder, each step more challenging on the slippery mud. The humidity weighed heavy, draining his strength faster than usual. Eleanor noticed his struggle, but said nothing, knowing Clayton's pride wouldn't allow concern. Then suddenly, Clayton spotted faint tracks, freshly broken foliage and footprints, human-sized, clearly hurried. "Here," he whispered sharply, pointing to the trail. Eleanor knelt, examining carefully. "They can't be far ahead," she murmured, tension tightening her voice. Determined, Clayton quickened his pace, driven by urgency despite the exhaustion pulling at him. Yet the jungle's damp earth betrayed him. His boots slipped on a moss-covered stone hidden beneath wet leaves. The world spun violently as he lost his footing, falling backward, his head striking the root of a massive kapok tree. Eleanor cried out as darkness swiftly overtook him. When Clayton regained consciousness briefly, blurred images greeted him. His vision spun, distorted by dizziness. His head throbbed, sharp pain radiating from the impact. Eleanor's distant, worried voice echoed weakly, but Clayton could not respond. Numbness spread through his limbs, pinning him helplessly to the muddy earth. He faded again, surrendering helplessly to unconsciousness. When Clayton next opened his eyes, Eleanor was gone. The silence was deafening, filled only by the rhythmic drip of water from leaves high above. A shadow moved in the foliage, and Clayton's sluggish heart began racing. Golden eyes, vivid and unblinking, glowed in the scattered sunlight penetrating the thick vegetation. A massive jaguar stepped cautiously forward, muscles rippling beneath sleek, spotted fur. Clayton's heart hammered in his chest, his body paralyzed by injury and exhaustion. Around the great cat, several more jaguars appeared, silent, powerful sentinels. Clayton recognized the alpha jaguar instantly by its unique coat patterns and confident posture. Its intense gaze never left Clayton's face. Yet rather than attacking, the jaguars maintained distance, watchful, poised not as predators, but as guardians. Clayton's mind raced back through memories of years spent tracking and protecting wildlife. Suddenly, a long-forgotten moment surged forward. A young jaguar cub entangled in a cruel snare, its terrified cries echoing through the jungle. Clayton had carefully freed the creature, releasing it to its anxious mother. Could this powerful jaguar, standing before him now, be that same cub, grown into a majestic protector? He drifted again into oblivion, reassured oddly by the quiet vigilance of these creatures. Yet one question lingered as consciousness faded. Where was Eleanor? Clayton's eyelids fluttered open, the blur gradually sharpening into clarity. Above him, the vibrant green canopy shimmered softly with moisture from the earlier rain, casting fragmented rays of sunlight that danced upon the lush foliage and the muddy ground. His head pulsed with a dull pain, the aftermath of his violent fall, and he tasted the bitter tang of blood mingled with earth on his lips. Panic seized him momentarily as he realized he was unable to move freely, his limbs heavy, muscles aching. But what startled Clayton most was the low, rumbling growl resonating nearby, vibrating subtly through his chest and into his weakened frame. Turning his head slightly, careful not to provoke sudden aggression, he froze. Surrounding him was a family of jaguars, their golden coats flecked with distinctive rosettes, glowing softly in the sunlight filtering through the trees. The largest among them, a formidable male, stood apart, clearly their leader. Its eyes, intelligent and piercing amber, studied Clayton intently. His coat bore unique marks, a bright golden swirl across his left flank resembling the mythical city's map, prompting Clayton's instant naming, El Dorado. Clayton's pulse quickened, yet despite his vulnerability, the jaguars showed no aggression. Instead, they appeared watchful, almost protective, encircling him like sentinels. A rush of memory surged through Clayton's throbbing mind. The trapped jaguar cub he'd freed years ago, the gratitude shining in its frightened eyes. Could this powerful creature standing before him truly be that same young jaguar he'd once rescued? Carefully observing El Dorado's movements, Clayton felt an inexplicable calm. It seemed impossible, yet something deep within assured him this majestic creature recognized their shared past. Clayton lay quietly, struggling with confusion and awe, his breath slowly stabilizing, the jungle air cooling his sweaty brow. Nearby, smaller jaguars, likely the offspring of El Dorado, remained cautiously curious, occasionally lifting their heads, sniffing the air, then relaxing again. Clayton's thoughts drifted toward Eleanor. Her absence now pressed heavily upon him, concern tightening in his chest. Eleanor was resilient, brave, but the rainforest held countless dangers. He recalled her urgent voice as consciousness briefly returned after the accident, her anxiety evident. Why had she left him? Was she safe? The jungle began whispering its evening symphony, cicadas humming and distant howls of monkeys echoing through the trees. Shadows deepened, and twilight stretched slowly across the forest floor. Clayton shifted slightly, gritting his teeth against pain, trying to sit upright. A sharp growl from one of the younger jaguars halted him. El Dorado stepped forward decisively, silencing the juvenile instantly with a gentle but authoritative rumble. Clayton remained still again, understanding their silent communication. He was to remain at rest. Meanwhile, miles from Clayton's location, Eleanor moved swiftly, panic bubbling beneath her controlled exterior. She had left Clayton only reluctantly, driven by desperation to summon help, fully aware each second mattered. Her plan was simple: reach the nearby village where they'd park their jeep and call in assistance from the ranger station. Nightfall descended, darkening her path with alarming speed. Eleanor stumbled, bruising her knee against exposed roots, determination pushing her forward. Just as exhaustion began sapping her strength, she spotted flickering lights ahead, an isolated, ramshackle dwelling nestled among towering trees. Relief mingled with caution flooded Eleanor's heart. A soft orange glow radiated from within the wooden hut. Eleanor approached carefully, knocking hesitantly. The door opened to reveal a weathered old woman named Rosa, slender and frail, her silver-streaked black hair neatly braided, face etched deeply by years of living in the harsh Amazon environment. Despite her fragile appearance, Rosa's dark eyes sparkled with strength and kindness. She took Eleanor's trembling hands gently, sensing urgency without needing explanation. "You're injured," Rosa said softly in accented English, her voice comforting and calm. "Come in, child." Inside the humble dwelling, filled with jars of herbs, bundles of dried leaves, and artifacts clearly connected to the indigenous traditions, Rosa efficiently cleaned Eleanor's wounds. She brewed strong herbal tea, revitalizing Eleanor's faltering spirit. As they talked, Eleanor explained the situation briefly, urgency evident in her voice. "We need to find Clayton quickly. He's hurt badly, surrounded by jaguars," Eleanor whispered, fearing Rosa would dismiss the scenario as impossible or superstitious. Instead, Rosa paused thoughtfully, eyes narrowing slightly. "Jaguars do not harm without cause," Rosa murmured, touching a worn pendant around her neck reverently, carved in the shape of a jaguar head. "Your friend may have protectors rather than enemies." Surprise filled Eleanor's expression. Rosa explained quietly about the local beliefs. Legends of jaguars acting as guardians of the forest, protectors to those who respected their home. Eleanor absorbed Rosa's wisdom, hope mingling cautiously with her fear. As Eleanor rested briefly under Rosa's vigilant care, back in the jungle Clayton slipped into a restless sleep, watched closely by El Dorado. In dreams blurred by fever, memories intertwined with present realities, Clayton envisioned himself younger, stronger, slicing carefully through the snare, entrapping the frightened jaguar cub, the animal's panicked breaths calming as freedom returned. Startled awake by a distant scream of nocturnal birds, Clayton saw El Dorado still there, motionless, watchful. Gratitude surged within Clayton. This powerful predator had chosen to shelter him, repaying a kindness given long ago. How deeply intertwined were their fates, how delicate this unspoken bond. In Rosa's hut, Eleanor prepared to set out again, energized and resolute, confident Rosa's words held deeper truth. Rosa handed her a small woven pouch containing a mixture of crushed herbs, offering protective charms murmured softly in her native tongue. Trust in the Jaguars, Rosa advised warmly, her eyes earnest. Your friend's heart must be pure. They sense these things. But hurry, evil men still roam these woods. Eleanor nodded, heart filled with newfound determination. Rosa watched Eleanor disappear into the shadowed forest, silently praying for protection and guidance from the guardians she believed in so deeply. Back with Clayton, dawn slowly broke through the dense Amazonian canopy, casting gentle golden hues across the clearing. Clayton stirred, strength returning gradually. He knew survival required movement soon, but strangely, fear no longer gripped him. Beside him, El Dorado shifted slightly, stretching powerful muscles leisurely, sunlight highlighting every defined contour beneath the creature's patterned fur. Their eyes met, a silent understanding exchanged without language, recognition passing between man and beast. Clayton now understood fully what he previously questioned. These majestic animals saw clearly his intentions, judged his heart, and found him worthy of protection. In that precious, fragile moment beneath the morning sun, a new alliance silently formed between Clayton Montgomery and El Dorado. Their shared histories now forever entwined in mutual respect, gratitude, and trust. Clayton knew their bond would hold firm, a testament to the quiet strength of compassion. The village of Santrum lay nestled at the fringes of the dense Amazonian jungle, its simple wooden homes set against lush greenery, now glistening vividly after recent rains. Sunlight warmed the ground, leaving steam gently rising from the dampened earth. The villagers bustled, resuming their daily tasks beneath a sky painted in hues of rose and amber. But amid the tranquility, a sharp tension lingered, a sense of unease emanating strongly from one woman in particular. Eleanor Pierce paced anxiously near the center of the village, her emerald eyes clouded by worry, strands of strawberry blonde hair escaping her ponytail and sticking damply to her flushed cheeks. Eleanor was typically composed, exuding strength despite her petite frame, but today her confidence wavered beneath the heavy shadow of dread. Her companion and mentor, Clayton Montgomery, was overdue, missing in the dangerous wilds beyond the village. Eleanor's heart churned with guilt over leaving him behind, even briefly, despite the necessity. Determined to take swift action, Eleanor approached Antonio Silva, the village elder. Antonio was tall and wiry despite his advanced age, his deep bronze skin marked by years under harsh sun, his eyes sharp and wise. He wore his silver hair tied neatly back, a worn straw hat shading his dignified face. Known widely for his integrity and calm leadership, Antonio commanded respect without ever raising his voice. Antonio, Eleanor began urgently, Clayton hasn't returned. I need your help. Antonio studied Eleanor thoughtfully, noting the anxiety etched upon her features. We will gather a search party immediately, he replied with steady resolve, gently placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Within the hour, Antonio assembled a skilled group, strong, capable villagers accustomed to navigating the perilous jungle. Among them was Miguel, a young man of 23, athletic and energetic, always eager to assist. Miguel possessed an easy smile and vibrant energy, but beneath his confident exterior lay unresolved grief from losing his father to poachers years prior, fueling his eagerness to help Eleanor. Joining them was Captain Luis Vargas, leader of the local ranger unit stationed nearby. Luis was stocky and sturdy, a man in his early 50s with a thick mustache and piercing dark eyes that rarely softened. He commanded authority effortlessly, his presence reassuringly solid. Luis respected Clayton deeply, recognizing their shared dedication to protecting wildlife. His commitment to tracking down Clayton was immediate and unwavering. The search party departed promptly, villagers murmuring prayers for their safe return. Eleanor's pulse quickened as they penetrated the jungle, retracing the muddy paths she'd taken earlier. Anxiety clung heavily to her heart, dread seeping into her veins each passing minute without Clayton's familiar voice or assured presence beside her. Meanwhile, deep within the forest, Clayton regained consciousness, the dull ache in his skull slightly eased, clarity slowly returning. Nearby, El Dorado lay poised, golden eyes half closed yet fully attentive. Clayton cautiously shifted upright, muscles protesting painfully. El Dorado observed silently, content with Clayton's cautious movements. Somehow, mutual trust solidified quickly between the man and the Jaguar, forged from gratitude and recognition of past kindness. Clayton realized clearly that Eleanor might have gone to seek help, yet his instincts screamed danger. The poachers could be nearby, relentless and brutal. He had to find Eleanor, warn her. But first he needed strength. Carefully, he reached for his survival kit, thankful it remained intact. After quenching his thirst, Clayton gathered energy, driven by concern for Eleanor. Back with the search party, Eleanor moved steadily alongside Antonio, their party vigilant, scanning for any clue. Miguel walked ahead eagerly, eyes sharp for signs. Suddenly, Miguel halted abruptly, raising a hand. "Here!" he exclaimed excitedly, indicating faint boot prints muddied by recent rainfall. Captain Vargas examined closely, nodding grimly. "Fresh. Clayton's likely nearby." Encouraged yet cautious, the group advanced, their pace quickening. Eleanor's pulse raced, hope intertwined with deepening anxiety. Every step brought her closer to Clayton, yet the lurking threat of encountering poachers shadowed her optimism. Suddenly, Antonio stopped, motioning silence. Voices rough and tense drifted from ahead, harsh laughter, metallic clinking. The unmistakable presence of poachers. Eleanor's heart froze momentarily. Luis whispered orders swiftly. The party quietly dispersed into protective cover, observing the poachers' camp through dense foliage. Eleanor peered cautiously. The poachers numbered 3, heavily armed and formidable. Their leader, a towering brute named Marco Delgado, stood imposingly, broad-shouldered, with a rugged face marred by a deep scar from cheek to jaw. Ruthless and feared, Marco was notorious for brutality toward both animals and humans who opposed him. "Time to move." Marco snarled impatiently, nudging a smaller, wiry accomplice named Paolo, thin and anxious, whose nervous mannerisms betrayed fear rather than cruelty. "We wait," Paolo pleaded nervously, his voice trembling. "I heard jaguars nearby, Marco." Marco sneered, disdainful. "Animals won't stop me. If you're scared, stay behind." Luis signaled silently, indicating readiness to intervene. Eleanor swallowed fear, nodding determinedly. They had to neutralize these dangerous men swiftly. Meanwhile, Clayton struggled onward, supported now strangely by El Dorado's constant presence, the Jaguar occasionally pausing, glancing back encouragingly, as if guiding him deliberately through safe passages. Clayton felt profound amazement at the creature's intelligence, trusting implicitly this majestic guardian leading him towards safety. Abruptly, distant voices reached Clayton's ears, human voices, sharp and hostile. Instantly, he realized danger loomed ahead, the poachers. Clayton's breath tightened anxiously. El Dorado also tensed, ears swiveling sharply toward the threat, low growls vibrating deeply from his chest. Clayton hesitated, uncertainty clawing his thoughts. Eleanor might be nearby, directly at risk. Yet confronting armed poachers alone, injured and vulnerable, was suicide. Clayton resolved swiftly. He must warn Eleanor discreetly without endangering them both unnecessarily. Back at the poacher's camp, Louis sprang forward, the party expertly executing a surprise capture. Marco roared furiously, attempting futile resistance. Miguel skillfully subdued Paolo, while Antonio maintained quiet control. Eleanor moved quickly, securing weapons hastily discarded. As the chaos settled, Eleanor's heart sank. No sign of Clayton. Luis approached, sensing her distress. "We'll find him, Eleanor," he assured softly, genuine compassion briefly softening his rugged demeanor. Eleanor nodded wordlessly, determination reigniting fiercely within her. She would not abandon Clayton again. Nearby, concealed safely within foliage, Clayton observed carefully, heart surging with relief, seeing Eleanor unharmed. He prepared to emerge, reassure her, yet hesitated. Beside him, El Dorado gently nudged him, eyes meeting meaningfully, encouraging trust. Summoning strength, Clayton stepped forward slowly, voice hoarse yet determined. "Eleanor." Eleanor spun around swiftly, joy illuminating her expression instantly. "Clayton." Their reunion was brief, yet profoundly comforting. Eleanor introduced him gratefully to the group, briefly describing their harrowing search. Clayton recounted carefully his extraordinary experience, El Dorado's incredible guardianship, his bond with the majestic Jaguar clearly evident. The villagers exchanged amazed glances, marveling silently. Antonio smiled knowingly, recognizing truth within legends passed down generations. Jaguars were indeed forest guardians. The chapter ended quietly, evening descending softly upon the jungle, wrapping its protective embrace gently around the reunited companions. Clayton understood clearly their struggle was not yet over, but hope burned steadily now, strengthened profoundly by newfound allies, both human and feline. Night descended swiftly over the Amazon, painting the jungle in shadows that danced ominously beneath the tangled canopy. Clayton Montgomery, weakened and feverish from his earlier injuries, sat propped against a broad kapok tree, the thick roots providing some semblance of comfort. Each breath rattled painfully in his chest, sweat glistening on his brow as he battled waves of dizziness. The dense air, filled with humidity, pressed upon him like a damp cloak, amplifying the fever's relentless grip. Despite Eleanor's brief reunion earlier, he had urged her and the villagers to return to safety, knowing he was still too weak to traverse the jungle paths without hindering their progress. El Dorado lay nearby, his muscular form relaxed yet ever vigilant, golden eyes glinting sharply, scanning the darkness. Surrounding him were his mate and two adolescent jaguars, their sleek coats rippling subtly in the dim moonlight filtering through the leaves. Clayton marveled quietly at their majestic presence, their quiet grace offering him a strange, reassuring comfort. He understood clearly now. He was no longer alone. Suddenly, a guttural grunt echoed from somewhere in the shadows, followed by rustling underbrush. Clayton stiffened instinctively, heartbeat quickening. The jaguars rose instantly, hackles raised, alert and tense. Emerging cautiously from the foliage, illuminated faintly by stray moonbeams, appeared a formidable group of wild boars. Large and robust, their dark, bristly coats were matted with mud, sharp tusks gleaming menacingly. Their leader, an enormous boar with jagged scars crisscrossing its snout, evidence of past battles, stood defiantly at the front, its small, fierce eyes glaring suspiciously at the jaguars and the vulnerable human. El Dorado stepped forward deliberately, a low, resonant growl vibrating powerfully through the clearing. His mate stood protectively behind him, ears flattened aggressively, while the younger jaguars flanked Clayton closely. Clayton watched silently, his body frozen in anxiety and awe. The boar leader pawed the earth, snorting defiantly, readying an attack. Clayton's breath stilled, realizing fully the fragility of his position. Suddenly, El Dorado sprang forward with explosive power, paws striking decisively, his roar deafening. The startled boar retreated hastily, sensing the unmatched dominance of the jaguar. Its herd followed swiftly, disappearing noisily into the underbrush, leaving behind a tense silence. Clayton released a shaky exhale, gratitude flooding his senses. El Dorado returned calmly to Clayton's side, amber eyes briefly meeting his with an unmistakable assurance. Clayton was protected. Meanwhile, back in the village of Santrum, Eleanor paced restlessly inside Antonio Silva's modest home. Her mind raced, overwhelmed by worries for Clayton's condition, guilt gnawing at her heart for leaving him once again. Antonio observed quietly from his chair, his calm presence a steadying force. Antonio's granddaughter, Sophia, quietly entered the room carrying fresh tea. Sophia, 17 years old with luminous brown eyes and long, ebony hair neatly braided, had a quiet maturity beyond her years, shaped by early responsibility after losing her mother to illness. Her voice was gentle, soothing as she offered Eleanor the cup. "Drink, please," Sophia encouraged softly, eyes filled with quiet empathy. "Grandfather always says anxiety dulls clarity." Eleanor accepted gratefully, sipping slowly, the warm liquid easing her tension slightly. Antonio leaned forward thoughtfully, his deep voice resonating gently. "Trust Clayton, Eleanor. Trust the forest guardians. We saw clearly the Jaguar's protection. Clayton is strong." Eleanor nodded slowly, acknowledging his wisdom. Yet doubt lingered, clouding her resolve. Sophia watched silently, then spoke hesitantly, yet earnestly. "Miss Eleanor, we can send a small patrol to watch over Clayton secretly, ensure he stays safe while recovering." Eleanor's heart lifted slightly, embracing Sophia's suggestion eagerly. "Yes," she agreed quickly, but discreetly, without disturbing the Jaguars. Sophia nodded determinedly, swiftly leaving to organize the secret mission. Eleanor exhaled, grateful yet conflicted. Antonio offered a reassuring smile, trusting fully in his granddaughter's capable hands. Back in the jungle, Clayton's fever fluctuated unpredictably, sometimes dulling his senses, other times sharpening his awareness painfully. El Dorado and the Jaguars remained constant companions, steadfastly protective. Clayton noticed El Dorado's mate, a sleek female with silvery rosettes marking her lithe frame, seemed unusually attentive, occasionally approaching Clayton cautiously, eyes filled with curious compassion. He smiled faintly at this unexpected gentleness. Nearby, unknown to Clayton, Sophia and Miguel approached quietly, eyes wide with awe and caution. Miguel, athletic yet nervous, gripped his machete tightly, constantly alert. Sophia's presence calmed him, her natural serenity and quiet bravery remarkable despite her youth. They positioned themselves carefully within dense foliage, observing silently from afar, amazed by Clayton's calm acceptance of the Jaguar's companionship. Sophia's belief in the Guardians intensified profoundly, validating her grandfather's teachings. Suddenly, from behind them came a rustling sound. Miguel spun sharply, machete raised defensively, heart pounding. Yet instead of danger, a small creature emerged timidly, a young tapir, injured and limping slightly, its deep brown eyes wide with fear. Sophia's heart softened immediately, kneeling gently, whispering soothing words. Miguel hesitated anxiously but lowered his weapon, watching her with admiration. Sophia swiftly examined the animal's injury, a superficial wound likely caused by the boars earlier. She tended it swiftly, applying medicinal herbs she always carried, kindness radiating warmly from her gentle actions. Miguel watched quietly, moved by her compassion. Meanwhile, Clayton gathered strength, determined now to regain independence. Carefully, cautiously, he stood slowly, leaning heavily against the kapok tree, testing weakened limbs. El Dorado observed attentively, silently engaging. Clayton took hesitant steps, dizziness fading slightly with movement, confidence slowly rebuilding. progress, though slow, felt significant. He glanced gratefully toward El Dorado, understanding fully their extraordinary bond had granted him precious survival. In the shadows, Sophia and Miguel breathed quiet sighs of relief, witnessing Clayton's improvement. Sophia carefully whispered instructions to Miguel, her voice steady yet gentle. Miguel nodded respectfully, deeply impressed by her quiet authority and courage. Night deepened slowly, jungle sounds enveloping them peacefully, now rather than menacingly. Clayton rested carefully, renewed optimism blossoming within his chest, strengthened profoundly by El Dorado's unwavering presence. The Jaguars curled comfortably nearby, relaxed yet ever watchful, guardians of this fragile yet profound connection between man and nature. The first rays of dawn penetrated the dense canopy, casting gentle beams of amber light upon the forest floor. Eleanor Pierce moved carefully through the undergrowth, eyes scanning anxiously for any trace of Clayton. Her heart was heavy with a mixture of hope and fear, the humid air amplifying the tension in her muscles. Behind her, Miguel and Sophia quietly followed, their own apprehensions concealed beneath cautious, determined expressions. Antonio Silva had insisted the young pair accompany Eleanor, trusting their youthful energy and familiarity with the forest. Suddenly, Eleanor halted, eyes fixated on a muddy patch ahead. Clearly imprinted in the earth were Clayton's unmistakable boot prints, surrounded by the distinct palm markings of Jaguars. Eleanor knelt, heart pounding as she traced the prints with shaking fingers. Beside the tracks lay Clayton's trusted survival kit, an item he never willingly parted with. Eleanor's breath quickened. Worry tightened her throat. Miguel glanced nervously around, gripping his machete tighter. Sophia placed a comforting hand gently on Eleanor's shoulder, radiating quiet strength and assurance beyond her years. "We will find him," she whispered softly. Eleanor nodded silently, clutching Clayton's kit tightly. A rustling sound nearby snapped their attention upward, Miguel instinctively stepping forward protectively. But instead of the anticipated danger, several jaguars appeared cautiously from behind thick foliage, led decisively by El Dorado himself. Eleanor's breath caught, eyes widening in stunned awe. El Dorado's powerful frame radiated quiet authority, his distinctive golden coat gleaming subtly beneath the dappled sunlight. His gaze was calm, watchful, absent of hostility, exactly as Rosa had predicted. Eleanor hesitated, recalling Rosa's words clearly. "Trust the Jaguars." She raised a calming hand towards Miguel, whose eyes darted anxiously between Eleanor and the Jaguars. Sophia observed carefully, fascinated rather than fearful, her steady calm influencing Miguel's hesitant relaxation. El Dorado took a cautious step forward, his eyes locked firmly onto Eleanor's, seemingly beckoning her silently. A wave of determination overcame Eleanor's uncertainty, urging her forward. "They want us to follow," she murmured decisively. Miguel glanced uncertainly at Sophia, who merely nodded resolutely, her trust unwavering. Reluctantly, Miguel relaxed his defensive posture, yielding trust to Eleanor's instincts. They followed the Jaguars deeper into the heart of the Amazon, each step mingling hope with nervous anticipation. Meanwhile, Clayton rested against a fallen log, feeling strength gradually returning despite persistent aches. He gently massaged his temples, grateful that his fever was finally receding. Nearby, El Dorado's mate watched carefully, her amber eyes glowing softly with gentle vigilance. Her quiet presence reassured him. The Jaguars had become companions rather than merely protectors. He knew Eleanor would search tirelessly, and this knowledge filled him with both gratitude and concern. Suddenly, El Dorado emerged quietly into view, followed closely by Eleanor and her companions. Clayton's heart surged joyously at the sight of Eleanor, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. Eleanor gasped softly, rushing forward impulsively, relief illuminating her features. "Clayton, Thank God, she breathed, embracing him carefully. Their reunion was brief, yet heartfelt, Clayton reassuring Eleanor gently. Eleanor introduced Miguel and Sophia, each greeting Clayton warmly, yet respectfully, clearly relieved. Clayton observed Miguel's youth and anxious energy, appreciating his genuine concern. Sophia's calm maturity impressed Clayton deeply, reminding him vividly of Antonio's quiet strength. We worried endlessly, Eleanor confessed softly, regret evident in her eyes. Clayton smiled reassuringly, appreciating her deep sincerity. The Jaguars observed quietly, their silent acceptance clear. Eleanor marveled openly at El Dorado's calm proximity to Clayton. "It's remarkable," she murmured thoughtfully, reaching cautiously towards the Jaguar leader, whose unblinking eyes studied her carefully before allowing her gentle touch. Sophia quietly moved beside Clayton, sharing her previous encounter involving the injured tapir. Clayton listened with keen interest, deeply impressed by the young woman's compassion. Miguel added enthusiastically, praising Sophia's bravery, admiration evident in his voice. Sophia's cheeks flushed softly, shy yet pleased by Miguel's sincere praise. Their peaceful gathering was abruptly interrupted by the sound of distant voices, harsh and urgent. Clayton stiffened, recognizing instantly the familiar tones. Poachers, likely seeking revenge. El Dorado and his mate tensed, ears swiveling sharply toward the threat, low growls vibrating subtly. Miguel instantly raised his machete defensively, protective instincts flaring vividly. Clayton shook his head slightly, cautioning him silently to remain calm. El Dorado moved decisively forward, silently indicating a hidden path leading away from danger. Clayton grasped Eleanor's arm gently, urging their quiet retreat. Swiftly yet silently, the group followed the Jaguar's guidance, navigating hidden trails through dense underbrush, concealed securely beneath thick foliage. Poachers' voices faded gradually, frustration evident in their shouts. Clayton released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, silently grateful for El Dorado's flawless guidance. Their escape route brought them eventually to a secluded clearing, peaceful and untouched. Eleanor exhaled relief, glancing gratefully toward El Dorado, whose calm leadership had undeniably ensured their safety. Sophia and Miguel exchanged quiet smiles, newfound respect clearly evident between them. Clayton settled carefully, breathing deeply, senses alert yet comforted by the Jaguar's watchful presence. Eleanor approached quietly, sitting nearby, voice gentle yet firm. "We need a plan, Clayton. Those men won't stop easily." Clayton nodded thoughtfully, acknowledging her concern openly. He respected Eleanor deeply, trusting her judgment completely. Miguel and Sophia moved closer, their youthful determination unmistakable, committed fully to assisting their newfound allies. Suddenly, from behind nearby trees, footsteps approached rapidly yet confidently. Everyone stiffened instinctively, anxiety immediately surging again. Yet relief swiftly overcame their tension as Luis Vargas emerged into view, his sturdy frame unmistakable, expression serious yet reassuringly calm. Beside him stood Rosa, the elderly woman who'd sheltered Eleanor previously, her dignified presence immediately calming. Rosa approached Clayton quietly, eyes deeply knowing. "The Guardians guided you wisely," she murmured gently, acknowledging El Dorado respectfully. Luis nodded in silent agreement, all briefly illuminating his usually stern expression. Eleanor stood, moving gratefully toward Luis and Rosa, thanking them warmly for their timely arrival. Rosa smiled softly, eyes twinkling knowingly. The forest reveals truths clearly to those who listen. Luis cleared his throat gently, expression growing serious again. "We apprehended the remaining poachers near the village, but Marco Delgado escaped," he reported grimly, caution clearly evident. Clayton nodded solemnly, understanding fully the renewed urgency. Nightfall deepened slowly, bringing cooler breezes, mingling relief with renewed caution. Clayton glanced appreciatively toward his gathered companions, human and feline alike, recognizing profoundly their shared purpose and mutual trust. Fragile yet resilient bonds had formed unexpectedly, solidifying courageously against formidable threats. Beneath softly glowing stars, their quiet conversations mingled thoughtfully, planning resolutely their next careful steps toward final safety. Clayton understood clearly that their struggle remained unfinished. Yet optimism blossomed vividly within his heart, deeply strengthened by newfound allies and the quiet, unwavering guardianship of El Dorado. Morning spread gently over the Amazon, bathing the jungle in soft hues of gold and emerald. Birds began their cheerful calls, echoing gently through the dense foliage, bringing renewed hope after days of tension. The air, heavy yet sweet with moisture, felt cleansing, as if nature itself breathed relief at the events unfolding beneath its protective canopy. Clayton Montgomery lay weak but stable on a makeshift stretcher, fashioned carefully by Miguel and Captain Luis Vargas. Eleanor knelt by his side, diligently checking his vital signs, her emerald eyes attentive yet hopeful, her slender hands gentle and precise as she administered initial treatment. Clayton's breath was steady now, the fever that once ravaged his body finally receding. Still pale and weary, he managed a reassuring smile for Eleanor, who returned it gratefully. Her heart, previously heavy with guilt, now brimmed with cautious relief. Nearby, Sophia and Miguel quietly organized medical supplies and provisions for their return journey. Sophia's movements were gentle yet assured, her serene presence a calming influence on Miguel's anxious energy. Miguel, though outwardly confident, revealed subtle signs of worry, often glancing protectively toward Sophia. Their shared experiences had strengthened a bond beyond mere camaraderie. Sophia's natural bravery deeply inspired Miguel, shaping his youthful impulsiveness into thoughtful action. Rosa, the elderly healer, sat quietly by herself, eyes closed, whispering softly to the spirits she believed guarded their journey. Her delicate hands, marked by age yet steady, held tightly onto her Jaguar carved pendant, as if drawing strength from it. Her serene face showed both wisdom and gentle strength, a reassurance to the entire group that their journey home would be protected. As the group prepared for departure, El Dorado stepped gracefully from the shadows, his golden coat shimmering softly beneath sunlight filtering through the leaves. His mate and offspring followed closely behind, watching carefully yet without hostility. The Jaguar leader's piercing amber eyes met Clayton's gaze, silently expressing understanding forged through shared survival. Clayton felt an intense wave of gratitude towards El Dorado, recognizing clearly that he owed his life to this magnificent creature. Gently, carefully, the team lifted Clayton's stretcher, preparing to leave the jungle's embrace. Eleanor cast a thoughtful glance at the Jaguars, silently expressing her gratitude, now fully aware of their protective role. El Dorado stood motionless, calm, dignified, his powerful presence silently reinforcing their fragile truce between humanity and nature. Rosa, sensing this sacred moment, whispered quietly to Eleanor, "He sees your heart clearly. Remember this day." Eleanor nodded solemnly, deeply moved. As the rescue party began their careful trek out of the jungle, Clayton turned his head weakly, eyes searching until they found El Dorado. Their gazes locked for a final, profound moment. No words were needed. Gratitude, respect, trust. These emotions bridged silently between man and beast, forever binding their fates. Clayton knew clearly that even separated, El Dorado's gaze would follow him always, a constant reminder of compassion's extraordinary power. Back in Sanram Village, weeks passed swiftly as Clayton recuperated under Rosa's attentive care. Rosa's herbal medicines and gentle wisdom greatly aided his healing. Eleanor rarely left his side, committed to his full recovery, her worry gradually replaced by optimistic determination. Villagers frequently visited, bringing fresh fruits, healing herbs, and quiet encouragement. Antonio Silva, dignified and wise, often spent evenings with Clayton, their conversations deepening Clayton's respect for the elder's quiet strength and insights. As Clayton regained strength, he and Eleanor frequently discussed plans to combat ongoing poaching threats. Their experiences had ignited fierce determination within both of them, deepening their commitment to protecting the rainforest and its remarkable wildlife. Captain Luis Vargas pledged his full support, sharing their resolve to eradicate Marco Delgado's network permanently. Miguel enthusiastically joined their cause, driven by renewed purpose, inspired deeply by Sophia's courage and Eleanor's passion. Sophia herself became instrumental, organizing educational efforts within the village, gently persuading villagers about conservation's importance, her youthful sincerity capturing hearts easily. Gradually, Santrum transformed. The village became a beacon of conservation awareness, its residents embracing protective roles, united by shared understanding. Clayton and Eleanor's determined leadership resonated deeply, inspiring neighboring villages to adopt similar initiatives. Poaching activities decreased dramatically, the once threatened wildlife flourishing safely again. Months later, during a tranquil sunset, Clayton stood quietly at the village outskirts, gazing thoughtfully toward the distant forest. Eleanor approached silently, standing beside him. "Thinking of El Dorado?" she asked softly. Clayton nodded, smiling faintly. "He changed us, Eleanor. All of us." Eleanor agreed quietly, understanding fully his reflection. Their experiences in the jungle had profoundly shaped them, deepening their shared purpose. At that moment, Miguel approached eagerly, eyes shining with excitement, Sophia walking gracefully beside him, her calm smile radiant. "Clayton, Eleanor, you must come quickly," Miguel urged enthusiastically. They followed swiftly to the village entrance, where villagers gathered respectfully. At the crowd's center, Antonio stood quietly, a familiar figure beside him. Clayton's heart leaped joyously. Standing tall and unafraid was El Dorado himself, quietly observing the village's respectful gathering. Villagers murmured reverently, understanding clearly the significance of this rare visitation. Clayton stepped forward slowly, awestruck yet grateful, heart racing with excitement. El Dorado calmly moved closer, golden eyes locking meaningfully onto Clayton's. No hostility, only gentle acknowledgement. Antonio's calm voice resonated gently. "He has accepted our alliance." The villagers nodded solemnly, comprehending fully their shared responsibility toward nature's guardians. Gently, El Dorado retreated, disappearing gracefully into the forest shadows. Yet his presence lingered, powerful yet comforting. Clayton knew clearly this profound connection would endure, guiding them always toward compassion and courage. Life in Santorum thrived thereafter, driven by harmony between villagers and the forest. Clayton and Eleanor remained dedicated leaders, their relationship deepening quietly amid shared victories and struggles. Miguel and Sophia's bond flourished gently, their youthful passion balanced perfectly by quiet maturity. Rosa continued guiding gently, her wisdom shaping generations to respect nature deeply. Captain Vargas and Antonio proudly witnessed their community's transformation, satisfied by meaningful progress achieved collectively. Years later, Clayton stood thoughtfully again at Santorum's edge, now accompanied warmly by Eleanor. Their bond strengthened profoundly through shared experiences. Gazing peacefully toward the distant jungle, Clayton felt vividly El Dorado's gentle gaze upon him, unbroken despite distance. He smiled softly, knowing fully their story had become legend, forever reminding future generations about compassion's power, nature's dignity, and humanity's sacred responsibility towards guardians. In life, kindness and compassion often return to us when we least expect them, just as Clayton's past act of mercy toward El Dorado became his saving grace. Let this story remind us that even small gestures of kindness can ripple outward, transforming lives in profound ways. As you walk your path each day, remember that the seeds of goodness you plant today may someday bloom beautifully in your own time of need. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone you love. Don't forget to comment below if you believe in the power of compassion and kindness. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. May God bless you and guide your steps always. Amen.